What is life? Why am I here? How is it all connected? And how am I going to navigate this beautiful but crazy journey? I'm Sylvia and welcome to the Soul Sunshine podcast. Today I'm talking to Lukas Dürnegger. Lukas is an Austrian filmmaker, director, editor and photographer. He's using his storytelling skills to create beautiful creative work. Lukas's short film Hamkummen in German, or Coming Home in English, tells the story of two friends searching for adventure and ultimately finding what it's really all about. I have just had a 2-month European summer break with my podcast, visiting Austria, where I'm from myself as well. And so, what better way to start my podcast rolling after this little break again than with Lukas. And we were supposed to meet in Austria, but with my busy holiday schedule and his busy working schedule, somehow we ended up missing each other. And this is why I'm even more excited to have him here with me today. Welcome to the Soul Sunshine podcast, Lukas. It's so good to have you here from Austria, dialing in from Austria.
I'm super happy that we finally made it.
Finally.
It has been a road so far, so I'm really happy to be here, yeah.
Awesome, thanks for joining me. Only 2 months, right? But hey, who's counting? So Lukas, today we're going to be talking about your story. We're going to be talking about how it wasn't necessarily a straight path for you to find your passion and really live your purpose. We're talking about your desire to live an adventurous life and the importance that holds for you on one hand side, but then on the other hand side, how the importance of home is really playing a huge part in your life as well. And you're sharing how the film Hamkummen came to be and what you've learned from making this film. So I'm really looking forward to that. Lukas, before we jump into our conversation, we met online, but through my brother, like you're friends with my brother, and somehow we ended up following each other online. And I love the content that you're putting out there, and you work a lot in the exercise and sporting scene and doing a lot of stories around that. But then it was during the pandemic when I came across your film Hamkummen, which means coming home in English, and not having been home for years at that point, it really kind of touched me on all different levels. It kept me like smiling and crying at the same time, because it was just such a beautiful summary of, what home is. And then obviously seeing the imagery from our home, because we're from the same state as well in Austria. So it kind of brought back a lot of memories. So that's when I connected with you as well. And I was like, thank you so much for making this film, and it was really like living so far away from home. It just was really something that brought me closer to it as well. And we're going to go into that a bit more in detail, obviously. But before we go there, before we go to your film, Lukas, tell us a little bit about your story, and what is your background?
So like you said already, we're from the same state, from southern part of Austria. And now I'm turning 28 next week, so I'm getting pretty old now.
Hey, you're talking to somebody who's turning 40 in a couple of months, so be careful what you're saying here.
And I grew up on the countryside, then graduated from school, went to Graz, which is kind of the next bigger city with a university, and started to study medicine, which I found out won't be my path in life after the first year. And so I decided, okay, what's next? And went to Innsbruck, because I've always been into mountaineering, always been into sports. And Innsbruck is the best hub in Austria for doing that and combining it with studying. So I studied business there and started my business as a photographer on the other hand, because I needed money. And my parents told me that the first shot on university, they're going to support me, but this was my second gig. So they were like, okay, now you have to find out how to make a living. And I was always, when we were ski touring and mountaineering with friends, I was always carrying all the stuff. So I was carrying equipment and stuff, because I used to be the more fitter guy in the group. And so it happened to me that I had to carry a camera once, because a friend started taking photos. And I just took it out and played around myself in the first steps and days. And I found out that it's really funny. And I just tested out stuff every morning for sunrises in Carinthia and taking photos. And it happened to be that at that time, social media wasn't that big. And Instagram just started off. So we put on the photos online. And people were like super amazed because at that quality, at that time, people were not putting out stuff. So it was kind of a first mover time for us. And yeah, so it happened to be a photography path the first 2 years in Innsbruck and making a bit of money that I can make a living out of it.
So it really started more out of a necessity to, pay yourself through uni rather than oh, this is what I actually really want to do in life.
Yeah, because the thing is, when I graduated, I had no idea what I want to do. It was just a classic way, okay, you have good grades in school, you have to go to med school. Because in my family, nobody studied before except for my mom, and she went to a teacher school, which is way different than usual university. So it was kind of, nobody knew and nobody had an idea how to give me some advice. So it was like, okay, you're good at school, you go to med school. Without even thinking if I...
Gotta be a doctor.
If I have a passion there, which I found out. And yeah, so I think I was just lucky that on one hand, I came out of a necessity, but on the other hand, through that necessity, I found passion for it. Yeah. And then after 2 years of photography, I found the video functions on the camera. And I thought like, okay, telling stories with photos is fun, but I think telling stories with video can be even more fun because you can showcase the whole stories from a different side. You can influence it more the way you want it. You bring it that way, that direction you want to go. And you have to be more detailed, in my opinion, when you do video. So I just started out of having zero skill in videography, and I think it went pretty well so far, yeah.
So you really completely self-taught when it comes to, doing all the filming and all the storytelling?
Exactly. Like, I mean, today there is YouTube, there is so much on the internet, but I always try to find it out in the field, which the process is way longer than the process when I'm, looking up a video on YouTube and just try it. But I think when you find it out yourself completely, you learn more and you can put in your own vision and you kind of create your own visual style. Exactly. So it was basically, some techniques you have to learn on YouTube, but the rest was just like, okay, try and error.
And so did you end up finishing your business degree as well, or did this creative path take over your trajectory again?
No, I was pretty lucky because I decided I was 2 years before graduating on university, and I had to go to a foreign university to do that because it's a necessity there. And then I was like, okay, I won't do it because I'm working already so much and I don't want to lose my contacts. And I asked them if it's possible to just combine it with my work experience, because at that time I was working in Canada, for example. I was in Saudi Arabia at that point already, and just getting a lot of experience in foreign countries. And so they let me pass by just counting in the experience I made in work. So I was pretty lucky though.
Amazing.
But I was never in university almost. Like when people talk about their studying time and university time, I can't relate really, because I was always just around working somewhere and yeah.
You were treading your own path.
But it was worth it. Yeah, kinda, yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, looking back at that now, when did you realize the passion and that you are, really holding for that creative process and for telling stories, no matter if it's with photography or with video? Was there like this point in time where you were like, oh my God, this is actually what really fulfills me, or this is really where I want to go? Or was that kind of like a thing that came, along the lines of you working and having all this experience that at some point that was just what you were doing? Or was there this kind of real point where you were like, wow, this has really found me?
I think it always felt natural. It depends what we were doing. Like in the first years, I was taking photos for sports events, and it has nothing or almost nothing to do with creative work. But the good thing is you learn the basic skills you need on a really stressful environment. And I think this is necessary, it was necessary for me. And the first time I really felt that this is something I really want to do for the rest of my life was our film festival in my hometown. Because at that point I was just traveling the whole time and never at home. And then we had the idea of producing our own film festival at home, because the film Homecoming was already done. And so we had this like piece of content in our hand and we were like, okay, what we're going to do with it? And I met Fabi, who is one of my best friends, and I work with him together and kind of a mentor. And he said like, okay, we're going to create this film festival, which usually takes place in cities like Vancouver, New York, whatever, like on a big scale. But we're gonna take it place in Kleberklint in Carinthia, which is a 500 or 700 people village. And he said like he had this big vision of if we can make it happen here, we can make it happen anywhere. And people are not used to this format, so they would be super critical. And yeah, so this was I think the first moment sitting there and having it was like 700 people over and watching your own movie, and you get straight feedback, you have talks afterwards, and it's all you created, the whole environment, the movie, everything. And I thought like, okay, this is kind of the moment I feel like this can be a career, and I would really like it if I do it with 80 years old as well. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So let's take a step backwards then from the film festival, because that's obviously where you were showcasing the film. So tell me about the film Hamkummen, in German, Homecoming in English. Where did the ideas come from? How did the process start? And I also, by the way, love the Corinthian accent that you've got in there, and like all the, like if you speak German and if you watch the German version, it's like, yeah, it's all a Corinthian accent, and it's not like in a proper high German. And I just, coming from Austria, I just love how authentic that is, as well, because that's just you, that just comes across, and I think that's why it's so powerful as well.
Yeah, I think that that's why, because I'm not able to speak proper German.
Well, yeah. I mean, some people would say like no Austrians are able to speak proper German.
Exactly.
Right?
But yeah, it's a funny road because I gained so much experience on the last year since we did the movie, and from today's perspective, it has a really unusual upcoming whole thing. Because like I told you, I was traveling all over the globe for working, but still as a photographer. But I had my film camera there as well, so I was just filming everything. Like we were driving in Arizona with our camper bus. We were in the desert of Abu Dhabi. We were, I don't know, in Norway or in Sweden or in Canada, for example. And I was always filming. Like when I wasn't working, I had always my film camera out on my drone. And so there was a huge pile of content building up over the months and years. And there was a guy in the next town in Carinthia who started the film festival on his own. He's a biker dude. And he called me because he knew I'm kind of working in a creative field. If I have a movie, and I was like, yes, but I didn't have one at that time. So I was just like, okay, what am I gonna do? It was like a week of time until the screening happened. So I was just sitting in Innsbruck and starting cutting something together. And I was like, okay, what can the idea be? And then I had the idea, okay, what really touches me on a daily basis and what really affects me on a daily basis. And there's always this like comparison between me and my grandfather. They always say that I'm complete same person that he is. And then I went home and had like some talks with him about it. And he was like, yeah, you are traveling the world and you seem always stressed. But I'm just sitting here in a small town for the last 70 years. I didn't even go to the next town, but I'm super calm and I'm kind of happy. And I can tell you more stories from this place here than you can tell from the whole world where you've been. And this was kind of the starting point where I started this little comparison which you have in the movie as well, which makes me think of why do we have to go everywhere without a certain goal, just like to feel, okay, I have to go out. I mean, I don't know if you have this feeling as well, but here in Carinthia, it's like everybody tells you, you have to go out, you have to go away. Because here everybody is stubborn and the field of view is super narrow. So this was kind of the starting thought of it. Like, how can I make coming home sexy again?
Yeah, nice.
Then I was just cutting it together in like a non-sleep week in Innsbruck. And it just, from day by day, it went better and better. But I still have to say it's super amateur project when I see it from my point of view now, because there was no script, there was nothing filmed on purpose except from the interview with my grandpa, and the rest was just like putting it together from certain occasions. The thing is, I think it was just this time for me in life where I started searching for adventures here, and this was one adventure. I asked people, hey, have you ever hiked from Carinthia to St. Pölten? And everybody was like, you are crazy.
Are you nuts? Yeah.
That's just super stupid. And we found so many cool places which we have never heard of.
But sorry, just for anybody that's listening, so that's like 350 kilometers across all the mountains in Austria, from literally one state to like, across.
It's like, I think it's easier for the people from the south of Austria to Vienna, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's pretty far, and it's not like a flat road, right? It's like mountains and the Alps in between. So
it would have been cool if it would have been more mountains, because the end was just flat.
At the end, yeah. The more you get towards Vienna.
Yeah. This was pretty annoying.
Okay, so I did interrupt you there, though. What else did you want to say?
So yeah, like in this, it was this state of mind at that stage of life, I think, where we just started searching adventures at home, and we found so many crazy places, which is not even an hour away from where I am now. And I was in Canada, for example, and I met some people and had them here in Carinthia, and there was a moment where I realized, like, we don't even know what we have, like not even we, where I'm skiing, hiking, biking, everything here. We still don't know the full extent what we can do here, because she was setting up the cottage, and she's from like BC, one of the most beautiful areas in my opinion in the world. And she was sitting at our cottage. She was like, "This is crazy. I want to stay here forever." She got this feeling of being home, away from home. And we had friends over, and they were like, "Hey, if a Canadian is telling you that this is even more beautiful what she has at home, we should try to find out on what extent we can enjoy our nature here, or even the whole surroundings." Yeah.
And it's about appreciating it as well, isn't it? Like actually seeing what's there and not taking it for granted.
Exactly, and having time to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because it takes time.
Yeah, and we just had this conversation just before we started the recording, that when I was in Austria just, 2 months ago, we ended up going to the Weißensee in Oberkärnten in Upper Carinthia, where you are from, that area. And I actually haven't been to that area myself before, which is, again, crazy. Like we said, it's like, 3 hours away from where I grew up. And it's just that there are so many places that we haven't even explored in our own backyard, because it feels like it's this feeling of, this will always be there and I'll do that at another time almost. But then, the world seems so much more fascinating. And because you were talking about your Canadian friend, it's so funny because I was putting up some pictures on Instagram, and I put up one from the Weißensee, and one of my friends messaged me. She was like, "Are you in Canada or where are you?" Because it's like there are those places where, they just seem really surreal when you're there yourself. And you're like, this is Austria, people don't sometimes realize. And I mean, for me, having lived away from home for 12 years now, I come home and I see it through a completely different lens, because I don't have it on a daily basis. But I think if you have it on a daily basis, you just, it's like with anything, you almost take it for granted, and you don't really appreciate the beauty that you've got around you. Well, I come home now as well, and in the summer in Carinthia, and I'm just like, fuck, it's so awesome here, you just can't find a better place to be in the summer.
Yeah, I can only agree. But like what I meant with time before, it's like recently when you're working so much and you're like traveling so much, you really need to find time to enjoy that and to still recognize it. Because like right now I'm sitting in front of the lake and looking down at the lake in my office, and it's like, okay, I know it's there, but I know that the next 3 weeks I won't have a single day where I can really enjoy it. So I think that's in general terms, for people here as well, it's just this time factor. And if you don't plan well, you can be living in the best surrounding ever. It won't make a difference because you have no time to enjoy it. Yeah.
And it's about finding those, short breaks or small time frames, where you can still go and enjoy it, even when you've got like 3 weeks of really busy schedule ahead, but to make sure you do make time for yourself, because it's good for your mental well-being, but then you also get to enjoy what's around you, I guess.
Exactly, yeah.
So, let's just go back to the film one more time.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the film, there's a few things that I really love about the film, and even though you say you've kind of mixed it all together and it became this this beautiful story really that you're telling. And for anybody listening, it's really a story of, 2 friends heading out, trying to hike across Austria to this film festival, and to find that, there is actually so much more along the journey rather than that it's just about the destination, you know, you kind of forget where you're going. And at the beginning of the film, you talk about, you know, you just want to get out of the valley, you just want to leave, and we've talked about that already. But then you say at the beginning of the film, you know, a man travels the world over in search of what he needs, and at the end you complete it by saying, and returns home to find it. And that really reminds me a bit of the Paulo Coelho story, The Alchemist, as well, you know. And I'm wondering, like, now that you've put that film together, and even though, you know, you didn't set out necessarily to produce it that way, but that's how it came together, what was your biggest learning along the journey of putting that film together and actually seeing how all those aspects really, you know, start moving together, if that makes sense?
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's always a gut feeling. So I mean, like I said, it's a super different way and different approach to putting up a movie. I wouldn't do it the same way now, I would say. But the only thing I was following in this process was my gut feeling, and this, like, when I see a scene in combination with, I don't know, voiceover or with music, I get this feeling, okay, this is right. And I always try to find the feeling what the audience will feel when they watch it. And this was kind of my only thing, how to go through the cutting process and the production process, to always keep this feeling high at several points. I learned a lot, like never putting in scenes which I like the most or kind of the most spectacular, but doesn't say anything. Because we have now all these measures of drones and cameras, and they get cheaper and cheaper. So it's easy to get spectacular shots, but if they don't say anything, it has no purpose in there. So there was a big learning in the cutting process, because at the end you're sitting at the festival and you see the direct direction to several scenes from the people, and then you know, okay, this is what I made right, this is what I made wrong, where are the people getting bored, where are they laughing, where are they emotionally touched. And there's always been scenes which have a certain message, even without saying anything. So I was always trying to search for these scenes. And this is over the years which always followed me, because I was on several film festivals and watching a lot of movies, and there's so many simplistic movies where there is only one camera angle, or there's only kind of a super simplistic style, but they're super touching because they say something and they have a certain message. And the first thought is like, what would I want to say, and not like what would I want to show. And on that level where we started the film festival, where you have a lot of indie filmmakers, we always had some movies there where it was always about most spectacular shots. For example, skiing movies, this is the biggest illness which they bring, in my opinion. Because I really understand it when you write it. When you are the writer or the cameraman, you have so many memories in these shots that you automatically start thinking this is the best. And when someone shows it who hasn't been there, it's a whole different experience. So they putting in skiing shot after skiing shot after skiing shot with really fast-paced music, and you see it for 2 minutes and you say like, yeah, this is really good skiing, but what else?
Where's the message?
Yeah, I want someone to talk, I want a story, I want a hero story, I want some troubles, I want drama, bam, bam, bam. And I think this is way more important to start with in the idea than just like saying, okay, I want to show the best sunset, the best sunrise. Yeah, so this is the best learning I got out of this on a really early stage, I would say, because usually you start with doing image movies in your career.
Yeah.
And I just started with a 40-minute movie.
So it's really about storytelling. It's about who's my audience and what am I showing them, and what are the messages behind it that resonate.
I mean, it's always like that. Even when you're sitting with friends, it's always like, who's your audience and what are you telling them and who you build up your stories. It's like filmmaking, it's just like an everyday life situation. But the cool thing is with filmmaking, you can decide who's going to be your target audience. Yeah. So you can always adjust the way you want to go. Yeah. And we had a lot of cool experience in these like first years. For example, the first film festival, we were invited as an underdog. Nobody knew that I'm doing that. And the movie was the only topic. Afterwards, the people were just talking about the movie. And I was like super surprised. And we already got a bit in trouble because the host of the film festival, which he showcased his main movie and they presented it as the main movie, nobody was talking about it. And it was like
Stole
super.
The limelight.
Yeah, I was bit uncomfortable at that evening, and I went home pretty early because the vibe was not good anymore. And then I told him, hey, I had no idea that this would be the outcome. And we invited him then to our festival and stuff, so we started kind of cooperating, which was good. But you saw this straight impression that people just pick out what they love most and what relates the most to them. And like you said before, it's about relating to the topic. And that's then when you listen. If you can't relate, you're not listening. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what do you think, like, in that case, you're going there as the underdog, like there's this massive movie that gets presented from the person that's putting on a film festival, and then at the end of it, everybody's talking about your film. What do you think were the messages that resonated most with people that were in there? Or where did you feel like, okay, this is something that people really resonated with and really could relate to?
I think it's the first time that they saw something made from someone who is actually living here. This was, I think, the first point where they can relate, and that we have all the people who were watching it. I mean, there were 99% local people. They have kind of similar stories in their lives. They have, for example, a grandpa who is kind of like that, or they wish to have a grandpa who is kind of like that, or they can find a certain location which they know, or they always want to try something, like we did hiking so far through the Alps. And they always wanted to try it, but they never dared to do it so far. So this can be as well a relating point. So there are several options where people can relate. But I think the main thing is, as you said before, the dialect as well. And that somebody who is not a director so far, or who is not, I don't know, make a living out of it at that point, bringing up a 40-minute movie which was just produced around the corner. And I would be interested in this as well. If somebody telling me he wants to show a movie which was produced right in front of my doorstep, about a story which I can relate, about people here, about the culture here, about how things are running here. And I wanna see if I can find myself in there somehow. And I think people did this at the festival as well.
Totally. And yeah, like I said, that's what happened to me as well. Like, I grew up in a small little country town. I was like, just want to leave that little town and, explore the world, do things. Really close relationship with grandparents. So it's like all those things, I think you really spoke to such a wide variety of people that are living in that part of the world, And then what I said before as well, I think it's the authenticity that came through from you, yes, the dialect, but then also just you being really you in that film, and even the voiceover and everything. It felt really real, and it felt really genuine, and it felt just really like you, and I think that's definitely something that people resonate with.
Yeah, and that's what I always hear from clients and projects and stuff. There is a funny story which describes it the best, I'd say. Like, first time I was invited to the German ski team, the biathlon team. I went there and they were in a training camp in South Tyrol in a fancy hotel, and everything was nice, and I was pretty new in the game, so I went there and they were just having dinner together. And like, biathlon is a huge thing in Germany. I mean, it's big in Austria, but in Germany it's a whole different story. So I think after football it's the second most popular sports. So they were sitting at the dinner table, and I went there and I got introduced, and I was just like sitting down next to the main girl, which is the best biathlete in Germany. And I was like, hey, what are you doing here? And she was staring at me like, she wasn't saying anything, like, are you serious?
What's wrong with you?
and then the whole team started laughing. And she was like, yeah, she's taking care of the skis.
And you thought that was real?
No. At that moment I already knew that I was wrong. But this was like this kind of approach that you try to treat everybody in the same way. And being this like kind of hillbilly guy from the countryside sometimes, this just made it easier for me sometimes to get connecting with people, no matter where they are, no matter where they are from. Because especially when you work with athletes or people, popular people, they're really used to that people are coming there and like, oh, I'm so sorry, and can I have a second, and blah, 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 blah. But they usually never get approached like normally.
Yeah, just normal people. I mean? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think this happened in the movie as well, because I think if I would done this in proper German, you will create a certain distance between the local audience and the movie. And as we said before, my target group was not people in Vienna or people somewhere. It was people here in first hand, and that's why I did it. And I wasn't even thinking about doing it in German anyway. So I think this just creates another space for people feel comfortable with and at the same time feel home. Because at home you're usually easygoing with your people and you feel comfortable, and that's what I try to create with talking as I would talk in a normal life.
Yeah, I love that. And then the other thing that really stood out for me as well with the film, was the sense that, it was never about the destination, it was always about the journey. And the reason why I loved this so much in the film is because I think you can apply that to a lot of things in life, Like a lot of people are trying to reach something, reach a goal or reach a destination or reach whatever it may be in their own individual life, and completely forget what the journey is all about and what they can actually learn and experience along the way. And so how do you feel about that now, and how is that knowledge that you've gained there helping you along your journey now, when you're looking at your own goals and where you want to go yourself, and trying to really enjoy the journey, I guess, which is sometimes really hard, right? Because you get so caught up in a goal or in something specific that you just want to be there. But what about all the beautiful things that happen along the way?
Honestly speaking, like the last 3 years, they were super. I was progressing a lot in terms of work, but it's sometimes dangerous when you call your hobby or your passion your work. So I think there were not that many occasions where I really was so awake to enjoy the process that much, because it was just a rush. Like you step to the next goal, you achieve it, and then usually you should celebrate for a bit or just like think about it, like what happened and reflect on it. But for me it was just like, okay, that the project A was 99% done and I was always 20% in project B. And this was the process over the last 3 years, and it's still right now. And I think the progress I made wouldn't have been possible without going that pace. But right now, like this year, for example, I moved back from Salzburg to Carinthia, like homecoming for real right now. And I think this was a bit of an idea out of my movie as well, because I was thinking about, okay, why did I do this movie before, and why did it have this good reputation, and why, I was thinking about my grandpa, for example, why can he establish his life like he's doing here in that way? So I took the step back and I moved back to Carinthia. I'm traveling all the time anyway, but like when I'm here, I have this time now to enjoy. For example, yesterday I'm just here, it's super calm, and you can really calm down from all this rush, which I'm usually affected the whole week. But before in Salzburg, like I said, I thought like I need to achieve new goals, I need to have more, and I was totally caught up in this rush from the inside voice and from outside elements like you see on social media and people your age, what are they doing? And you should be there as well, pressure from society, blah, blah, blah. And it really affected me. So I got myself a flat in Salzburg last year, which was like super big, super fancy, like you had sunset and sunrise in the kitchen, like, and that's not me. And I was sitting in there in the first 2 weeks, and it was just like telling myself like, I don't need this. Like I really don't need this. And I realized it in the first month already, that this is just something. I told myself like, you need this, you have to have this to show your status, for example, which is, in my opinion, completely dog shit. Like you need something where you feel home, and which feels right for you as a person in the state where you are and that level where you are right now. And you don't have to showcase anything to anyone where you think like, I need to impress the other person, or I need to impress the field where I'm working with, or I need to show my success, whatever success is. So that was a big learning, and I think it's still out of the production of my first movie, because this just said it all. Like, go there where you feel home, go there where you feel good, and you don't have to do anything which society tells you. And it sounds super, I'm so a wise man, blah, 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 but I struggled with that a lot as well, like the last years, for example. And for me, it was always, when I wasn't home, friends have been home. So Sometimes I would rather chill with your brother in his flat in Salzburg than just being in my fancy flat, because it felt more home like my flat. Yeah. So I think the learning already started with the first movie, and it's still super relevant today. I was watching it last weekend again after, I don't know, a year, and it's still super relevant because you can always identify this term of home with other things than just a region. Home can be friends, home can be nature, wherever it is. Home can be, I don't know, just a activity, for example, wherever you feel really good and wherever you're able to enjoy it for the moment.
It's like you said, it's a feeling rather than a place or somebody, right? It's like you can find it anywhere. It just has to feel like when you're talking about your flat in Salzburg, it obviously just didn't feel right for you, right? You had this gut feeling about this is awesome and really nice, but this is not me and this is not what's going to make me happy in the long term.
And I think it's when I'm talking with friends same age or even younger, they struggle with it to be brave enough to tell themselves, this is why I feel happy. And I struggle myself as well with that, with the circumstances. Like, I was lucky enough to find that place where I'm happy right behind my house. But nowadays it's really hard to say that, like, okay, maybe there is so much more out in this world, but this is actually the happy place. And luckily I was able to travel that much that every vacation or every work trip I came back, it just like forced this feeling and strengthened it up. Like, it was stronger and stronger every time I came home. And so you start believing in it, but first it's really hard to convince yourself that maybe it's just a place right behind your house that where you're happiest or where you are you the most. Yeah.
Why do you feel that people, and especially like young people, these days are struggling so much with, realizing that and really being true to themselves when it comes to that, when it comes to just really finding something that makes you happy, no matter if it's, the job or the location or friends, whatever it may be? Like, why do you think that's the case?
I think when you can't reflect on yourself and you can't get to know yourself when it's too loud. And right now it is really, really loud out there because we have so much input and so much we should chase, we should reach, we should go after, that we just lose ourselves in that huge storm of information, of input, of society's demands of where should we be in what age. For example, like, I'm turning 28 in a week, and then you think about, okay, you're turning 30, and this is just the biggest, like, stupidest idea ever, that when you're turning 30 in Austria, they give you the feeling that your life has to be settled and you're kind of done. So for the rest of your life,
very
the
Austrian,
next
isn't it?
4
Yeah.
And it really annoys me because I don't know, I have a friend, for example, and he's super successful in what he's doing, and now he's changing career. And like, he has seen so much, and like, super empathic person and just a great character, and it doesn't matter, it just matters the number of 30. And if you're not settled and if you have not a family or bought a house, you didn't make it. And that's just so weird. And I think all this like pressure from outside, especially for young people, because I'm super happy that I grew up in a time where you don't have access to internet. And I think in our region we've been pretty late with having it when I compare it to people from the city. And I'm super happy about that because you had a lot of time exploring yourself and playing, trying, failing, and listening to your inner voice. Because when I can imagine when I was sitting in primary school at home and you came home and you made appointments in the morning in school with your friends and you said, like, we're going to meet at 3 p.m. there. And there was no question that they won't be there because nobody was thinking of this, oh, maybe there are better alternatives. And right now with all this input, you have so many options that you just drown in them and that you never get anything done because there are too many options, and you always start thinking of, okay, maybe there is something better coming. And you just like stop living, and life is just passing by and time is just passing by, and you're not choosing anything. Because without choosing an option, you will never do anything and you won't be able to do anything because you're constantly on the change.
Yeah, it's interesting Because like you're saying, you're not choosing any option, but at the same time, you're comparing yourself, what you said before, right, with everything else that's going on and with where other people are at and with what they are doing. But like rather than just concentrating in yourself, because everybody is on their own timeline, it doesn't matter. And it's interesting when you talk about that 30 mark in Austria, I remember even being in my early 30s, and that just had changed my career. I wasn't married, I didn't have children, I didn't own a house. And I remember my mom saying to me, why are you so different to everybody else? And I really had to sit down with her because she's also from that generation, in Austria, where everybody just does more or less the same thing, without meaning that in a bad way, But I had to say to her, I was like, Mom, just because I'm doing things differently doesn't mean that I'm doing them wrong, They're just different, I'm just doing them in my own time. And yeah, it's really like it's a very culturally entrenched way of looking at things, and I think people like you then as well that go out and just tread their own path and just do what makes them happy rather than what is expected from them is a huge inspiration in itself.
Yeah, it's like on Saturday I was in the local Kirchtag.
Love it. It's a party. How do we explain a Kirchtag? It's like a
Austrian traditional get together.
Yeah, it's like a party. It's like a kind of a village party. Yeah.
Yeah. And I haven't been out for a long time here, so I haven't seen a lot of friends in a long time. It was just great, and like you said, this inspirational factor. Like you stand there in this party tent, and it's super loud music, and people are drunk, and you're a bit drunk, and it's just a funny time. And there were a lot of people just coming over, like, "Hey, you do it right," and I was like, "What am I doing right? Like, what the fuck?" Like, yeah, you go there and you just do your thing. And then I was like, why are you not doing it? Like, I don't know. I just consider myself lucky to be in the right spot in the right time. But I still think you can choose to do it differently or just try things out. You don't even have to change everything. Maybe if by trying something new, you find out that what you're doing right now is the best thing you can do. Perfect. So you're a super lucky person. And you don't have to be on this like chase. Yeah. But it's just funny when people are like, yeah, you do it the right way. You're doing it right. Like, what is right?
Yeah.
And why? I think it's just this, there is this one step missing sometimes for people to try another thing. Because like you said before, you have this old-fashioned way of thinking in Austria, and especially on the countryside, that you, on an early stage in life, you get this idea of change is a failure. You have one choice, and the first choice, if it's not fitting, everything which is coming afterwards is a failure. And I have really a problem with that the term change is always so directly connected with failing.
That is so true.
And I don't know if it's in other places as well. I haven't found it yet. I mean, a bit in Canada on the countryside, but not at that extent. But I think the German, Austrian, I don't know about Swiss, but Germany, Austria, there is still like super deeply in our cultural behavior that change is not a good thing.
Yeah.
And I have so many friends turning 30 now or in their early 30s. They have been really successful and they are burnt out. Like, I just did a post a month ago. There are so many people right now in the last 2 months which told me that they have a burnout. Some can't even get out of their bed. Some can handle life still pretty well, but not able to work anymore. And then I always ask them, like, how did your bosses react to it? And they are usually in their 50s, for example. And some, they really struggled with being brave enough to tell them that they have a burnout and think of, hey, I'm just sick or I have this and these circumstances, but not even mentioning the term of a burnout because it's just a huge stigma. And they have to change their life now. They have to do it. They can't even choose anymore. And so I think these processes just should show us if you get a burnout that you're too afraid to change your path, that's not worth it.
Yeah.
Like, never ever. And there are some of my friends who just like they were too afraid to change, and that's why they got into a burnout because they kept on going on a path where they just went depressed on a daily basis. And yeah, I hope that this is gonna change, and I hope people start to address it more and more in the next years, because otherwise we're just shifting to a huge mental health crisis. And this is going back to the film festival now. This is one intention we had doing our own festival, just showing kids or basically everyone, but kids was my main idea and the first thing. What can you do outside of this everyday life you know? Because I know so many friends which I met like now on the party on Saturday as well. They go work from Monday to Friday for the last 15 years, same way. And then they don't like it that much, but now it has become kind of an everyday lifestyle. And they go partying from Saturday to Sunday or Friday to Sunday.
Drink
to
away
forget
all the sorrows, yeah.
Exactly, to forget what they have been doing from Monday to Friday. I mean, I know people who are super happy and they're doing a great job what they're doing, but there are a lot of them who just tell me the whole time, hey, I hate it and I don't know what to do. And with this festival just showcasing what can you do here, and you can even go abroad and just try yourself out and get to new people who are in the same mindset as you are. And if there is someone who's coming in 10 years and tells me, hey, I've been there at your festival and I've seen that and this motivated me so much or inspired me so much that I just tried myself out and I found my way, I think we reached our goal with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, you've talked about a lot of really important points there. It's like the fact that, like when you said they come up to you and say you do it right, you know, it's like, first of all, what's right and what's wrong, like that's different for every person. And at the end of the day, it's always a choice, right? But it's about taking a step into that direction. And like the story about burnout is really interesting as well, because it's like, burnout is not a failure, you know. Burnout is a serious condition and you're there for a reason, you know. You're there because you do need to change your life, and if you don't do it, you won't be getting any better, you know. So it's like people realizing, I think, that it's on them. I think it's a very hard thing to swallow at the beginning when you go through something like that, that you realize that you are the one that has to make the change, because it puts all the responsibility on you. But in the long term, it's really empowering, because you are the one that can create the life that you want to live, and you can design it the way that you want to live. And yes, of course, some people have more freedom and less freedom based on financial situations, etc., whatever it may be, family, you know. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is up to you how you create your life, you know, and how you do that. So I love that you are also trying to, you know, show that in your film, that, you know, you can go out and try new things. And, you know, I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? That you come back and be like, that wasn't really for me, you know, I'm just going to go back to what I used to do. Or maybe you find something else, you know. I think it is like they say that energy creates energy, you know. When you start doing things, it actually creates energy, and you keep doing things, and then at some point, you know, it might not be the first thing you try out, but the third thing you try out that might actually be like, that's actually making me really happy, you know. But if you never start that process, you know, you're just gonna keep living a life that you might not be 100% satisfied with.
Yeah, and to be realistic, especially we're in Austria, I mean, we have such a good system here.
Oh my God, people have no idea how good they have it. Yeah.
It's crazy. And like you said, here, if you try something, you, at the worst case, you get like covered by the state.
Yeah.
That's the worst case. So, and I don't want to empower anyone to like say, okay, just do whatever and get covered by the state. Yeah. That's not what I want to say, but how high can you fall? And I think there are so many other countries where I've been already and talking to people, and they were always like, oh, in Austria or in Europe, you have such a great system of healthcare, social systems, everything. And we just have to know that as well, because it makes it easier to try something out. Especially you go studying in Austria.
For free.
And you pay like, basically for free.
Yeah, basically for free.
And I have a friend in Canada, and she studied medicine, or she just started med school in UBC in Vancouver. And it's a shitload of money. And she knows already that she has to pay it back in her first years working. Or the first 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I just want to say, yeah.
And this is something which just cuts down your options, for real, in my opinion. But here, even if you start your studies with 30, you're done by 33, in best case, so what? And you tried something new, and for the rest of your life, you can go on with something which makes you more happy than option one, which you did before. Yeah, so I think this is another really good state where we are right now, that we still have these options.
Yeah. I'm all for reinventing yourself. Like I said, I changed my careers in my early 30s, and I just feel like life's too short to do something that you don't really love and that you're not passionate about, and where you don't feel like, you know, you're really contributing to what it is that you want to do, you know, in the world. And so that brings me back to you again in terms of like, how does it feel for you, you know, to be able to live your passion and your purpose? Like, what's that feeling that you get up with every morning, you know, and how can you just share a little bit of how that feels as well for people out there who are potentially like scared to make the jump or do something that they actually really want to do rather than, you know, what they have been doing so far?
I mean, from the outside, I think it sometimes looks romantic what I'm doing, but I think it was the second year in Innsbruck, I just was posting every night shift I was doing. So that people really get a realistic idea what the job really means. But still, I can't imagine doing something else, like nothing at all. I'm super happy. And the cool thing is I create my own reality, and I can go to, I don't know, company XYZ and tell them, hey, I got an idea. Let's do it. And the cool thing is it just starts with me and with the idea I have, or the idea I have from friends or work together on a certain idea. And this is, I think it's super huge privilege to have that, other than just being told what to do. And I think I'm a person who's really bad when I have too much supervision. And so for me and for my character, I can't imagine doing anything else because I have so much freedom in doing it. But freedom also means responsibility on the other hand. Responsibility for yourself, that's, I think, the main factor. Because like I told before, it's super easy to get into such a rush that you don't realize anymore, like, what's happening, what am I doing, bam, 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 because you like it so much. And like, yeah, I think the term that I like it, the fact that I like my job already is just a huge privilege compared to a lot of people out there, that you were able to find it so early, what you want to do. Yeah. It feels pretty cool, and I'm super thankful for that, because it's not I don't take it for granted, like not a single minute, not a single day. And when you're coming from my region, it's pretty uncommon actually to go that way, I would say. Now it's getting better. I know a lot of young people who are trying to get in different careers, which is super good. But yeah, never take it for granted what's going on.
Yeah, amazing. And so what does it mean for you now to be home, you know? Like, your film is about homecoming, and now you've actually, you know, you started in Graz, you went to Innsbruck, you did lots of traveling around the world, you ended up in Salzburg, and now you finally come back home to Kärnten, you know, to Carinthia. Like, how does that feel? Like, what does that mean to you personally?
Yeah, like I said before, I'm able to relax more deeply. Sometimes it feels a bit scary because it's so calm here that you just hear yourself breathing, and I have to learn it to get up with this situation again and to deal with it. But on the other hand, it's just so cool. Like, you wake up in the morning, for example, and you take a day off, which usually never happens, but sometimes it does. And you take your bike and you ride for an hour to your grandpa's house for a coffee. And this is just super good. Like, I can't imagine anything better, because it's so down to earth. Because sometimes stuff is happening in my job which is kind of surreal, where I just think, like, am I doing this right now, or am I running this shoot, or it's crazy. And then you just sit down at your grandpa's house and he asks you what you're doing, and he just doesn't give a fuck who you're working with. And he doesn't know the people, and it's more important if there was a deer in his forest. And I just love that, because it puts things in perspective. And yeah, I'm really thankful to have this option still to hang out with him. Yeah.
Awesome. And I love it when you say it's more important if there's a deer in the forest, or probably if you've eaten a good lunch, right? Have you eaten something good today already?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love it. Well, Lukas, thank you so much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure checking in with you. I think we could talk for a lot longer. There are so many great topics. But yeah, you've just given us such a good overview of your work and your life, and, you know, how you're approaching things. So the 3 main points of wisdom that came out of our conversation today. The first one was, you know, when you were talking about your flat in Salzburg, and then it just didn't feel right for you. I think it's a really good point around, doing what you love to do and not doing what you feel like is expected from you and what other people want from you, or what you even feel like you need to prove to the world, but rather than that, really listening to yourself and being like, well, do I really need this flat? Do I really need this job? What is it actually that makes me happy and that makes me content? And where can I really live my passion and my purpose in an authentic way, and not in a way that other people are expecting from me. The second thing that you've talked about is, when we were talking about the beautiful area that you're living in now in Carinthia, and you're looking out at the lake, but then making sure that you actually have the time to enjoy it. So often we get caught up in all the stress and all the busyness and everything that's happening in our outside world that we actually forget to just stay still and really take in where we are or what we have around us and really appreciate that as well. And then the third point that you said that I really loved as well is, home cannot just be a place. Home can also be friends. Home can be nature. Home can be even an activity that you love doing and where you feel like, your heart springs with joy. So these are the three things that I've really taken away from today. Thank you, Lukas, so much. It was amazing to talk to you. Tell me if they want to get in touch with you. So there's your Instagram page, and then tell us what the best way to get in touch with you is.
Well, it's Instagram.
Instagram, yeah.
That's the fastest, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so it's Instagram. It's lukas.dürnegger, Dürnegger. I'll put those links into the podcast notes as well. I'll put the link to your film, obviously, into the podcast notes so that people can watch it and can get an understanding of what we've been talking about today. Yeah, I would say home is where the heart is, right? Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it a lot. It was super nice.
Awesome. Thanks, Lukas. Well, the way we say it in Austria, we would say Tschüss, Baba, Vierte, bis zum nächsten Mal.
Servus.
Servus. See you next time. Okay. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. I really hope you got something out of this episode today. It really might have inspired you to look at your surroundings differently, at your friends, at your work. We've covered a lot of things from, the place where you live, the home, like what it means to live your purpose and your passion, and also how important it is to really connect into what you want to do and what you want to get out of life, no matter what, other people around you are expecting from you. Please do share the podcast with your family and your friends or anybody who you think might benefit from this information and what we've talked about today. I really hope this episode brought some sunshine to your soul. I'm sending love and light your way, and until next time.